Secret door reveals chilling evidence of a killer's darkest secrets. In a quiet town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there stood an old Victorian mansion, long abandoned and forgotten. The house, once the pride of a wealthy merchant, had fallen into decay, its windows shattered, walls crumbling, and stories of its haunted past whispered by locals. But beneath the dust and neglect lay a secret, a door that had remained undiscovered for decades, hiding the terrifying truth of a serial killer's darkest deeds. The discovery. It was a group of urban explorers who stumbled upon the mansion one autumn evening. Their flashlights cut through the shadows as they crept through the dust-laden halls, capturing footage for their online documentary series. The creaking floors and eerie silence sent shivers down their spines. But it was when they reached the basement that they found something truly disturbing. A loose wooden panel in the wall caught their attention. Behind was an old iron door, rusted but intact, with no visible handle. One of them, Sam, found a crowbar and forced it open. What they uncovered was more than they had ever anticipated. The chilling room. Beyond the door lay a hidden chamber, cold, dark, and filled with horrors unimaginable. The room was lined with shelves stacked with carefully labeled boxes. The labels bore names, dozens of them. In the center stood an old wooden chair with straps attached to its arms and legs, an unmistakable sign of torture. A stained metal table stood against the wall, alongside an array of surgical tools, knives, scalpels, saws, all meticulously arranged as if waiting for their next victim. The air was thick with decay, and the explorers' stomachs churned as they realized what they had walked into. Someone had used this space to commit gruesome acts, and the evidence of those crimes had been meticulously preserved. The evidence that spoke. One by one, they opened the boxes, revealing a collection of personal belongings: lockets, watches, rings, and in some, even locks of hair. But the most horrifying discovery was the collection of videotapes, each marked with a date. As dread filled their hearts, they knew they had uncovered something sinister beyond their worst nightmares. A laptop, ancient but still operational, sat on a nearby desk. With hesitant fingers, they pressed play on one of the recordings. The grainy footage showed a dimly lit room, the very chamber they stood in. A man, his face partially obscured by shadow, spoke in a calm, methodical voice. He detailed his victims, their names, their lives, and then their fate. The camera never wavered as he carried out unspeakable acts. The explorers recoiled in horror, some turning away, others frozen in shock. This was not just an abandoned house. It had been a sanctuary of evil. The killer's identity. As they searched through more files, a name emerged: Jonathan Harker. A name that, upon searching the internet, revealed a shocking truth. Harker had been a respected psychologist in the town nearly 40 years ago before he mysteriously disappeared. No one had connected him to the missing persons cases that plagued the town in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The police had suspected a serial killer, but no substantial evidence had ever been found until now. A closer look at the videos showed his descent into madness. At first, he appeared professional, a man of reason, recording his thoughts about human behavior. But as time progressed, his fascination with fear and pain grew. He experimented, testing thresholds, pushing boundaries, until he had fully embraced the monster within. The escape and the aftermath. The group knew they had to leave immediately. They took as many tapes and documents as they could carry, their minds reeling from the horror they had just uncovered. As they reached the surface, they called the authorities, their voices shaking as they described the unholy discovery. Within hours, the mansion was swarmed by police, forensic teams combing through the evidence. The press caught wind of the story, and soon, the town that had once forgotten its dark past was thrust into the limelight. The truth was finally out. Jonathan Harker had been one of the most prolific killers the country had never known. Yet, one question remained unanswered. If Harker had vanished decades ago, why did the room appear recently used? and who had been tending to the chamber all these years. As the authorities searched for clues, the explorers could not shake the feeling that someone, perhaps Harker himself or a successor, was still watching from the shadows, waiting for the secret door to be closed once again. A haunting twist. Days passed, and news of the discovery spread across the country. The tapes were analyzed, and every item in the chamber was cataloged as evidence. However, something strange began to happen. One of the investigators assigned to the case, Detective Monroe, reported unsettling occurrences. Items in the evidence room moved on their own. Whispers filled the halls of the precinct at night, and several officers suffered from inexplicable nightmares. One evening, Monroe decided to revisit the mansion alone, determined to uncover anything the initial search had missed. With his flashlight guiding his way, he retraced the explorer's steps down into the basement. The chamber was now empty, its gruesome secrets removed, but the presence of evil lingered. As he stood in the cold darkness, he heard it, the faint sound of breathing. Heart pounding, he turned, shining his light across the room. Nothing. But then, the iron door behind him creaked shut with a force that sent dust flying into the air. He rushed to open it, but it wouldn't budge. His radio crackled, but the signal was lost. A chilling realization dawned upon him. He was not alone. From the darkness, a voice whispered his name. He spun around, gun drawn, but there was no one there. Then a shadow moved, followed by a low, guttural laugh. The walls seemed to close in, and as panic set in, the truth hit him. Jonathan Harker was never gone. He had merely been waiting. The final revelation. By morning, Monroe was found outside the mansion, unconscious but alive. His mind, however, had shattered. He muttered incoherent words about the eyes in the dark and the voice that knows all. Medical professionals declared him mentally unfit to continue his duties. Yet, the most disturbing part? The mansion, now under strict police watch, had shown signs of new activity. Lights flickered at night. The iron door, welded shut, was found ajar, and fresh footprints were discovered in the dust. Jonathan Harker may have been a man once, but what he had become was something far worse. The secret door had been opened, and with it, something far more sinister had been unleashed. The town could only wonder, had they truly uncovered a killer's secrets, or had they merely become part of his next twisted game?